Hello, everybody. I am in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just north of Nashville, and I'm at the Day Wind Recording Studios, and I'm here with my friend Dusty Wells and Dave Clark, and Dave Clark's wife Cindy, who's doing all the all the geeky stuff, and Colleen. She went with me to the. I haven't been home since the funeral. I guess you've watched the funeral. It was unbelievable. Beautiful. But today we're gonna do a podcast. I don't know where this is going, but they've got 3 cameras. This is so cool for me. You know how I love geeky stuff.
You and Dave.
I know Dave Clark does too, and Dave is a songwriter. It's just an honor to be in his presence. He's written so many songs that you know. Have you written a lot of Christmas songs?
Oh, I'm trying to collectively work my way up to a portion of what has accomplished. We're ramping up. I figure I got a couple hundred left to go before I hit that mark.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to have fun, and I wanted to let you know that you can subscribe to their podcast.
We get Mark Lowry.
We have Mark Lowry in the room.
I am so excited.
It's a fun thing to learn behind the scenes, I guess, stuff, stories from these different artists, and I'm sure there'll be more coming. So I put a link in the show notes. I don't know where it is on Facebook. Anyway, click the link, go to their YouTube. Now subscribe to their podcast. I love to tell the story.
Wow.
Bye-bye.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great.
Now that was Facebook.
We're done. We already got the endorsement. I don't know that we need to stay any longer.
He's got some good stuff to say. I feel we're going to have some good stuff. I feel like Dave with your questions.
You know what? When normally we're going to interview somebody.
Are we already going?
Yeah, we're always
Oh,
going.
wow.
We're going.
I guess I do need to get in the microphone. You do too.
Thank you.
You need to get somewhere. We'll find it out. But normally I'll go back and a lot of people I've known for a lot of years, but then I'll try to find some information. And we didn't have a lot of prep time for this.
Oh, really?
And yet, all I could think was, what a perfect day after a week that our industry has had to sit down with people where there's no pressure, there's no, I needed a happy, Cindy and I drove down for the funeral with the rest of Nashville. And
for those of you who don't know, we're talking about the Nealons.
Yes.
Kelly Nealon Clark, Jason Clark, Amber Nealon Kiesler, and her husband Nathan, and Melody.
Oh, she's precious.
Their assistant. And I did not know the other 2 people, but they were the pilot and his wife, and they were all killed. It was on Friday. The 26th, and we were all about to get on the cruise to Alaska when we got a notice to meet with Bill in this room at 6:30, and we didn't know why. At first I thought, when I heard this from Dina, I thought Bill, maybe something happened to Bill, because he's the oldest one amongst all of us. He's going to outlive everybody. He'll be doing everybody's funeral, and I hope so. But so yeah, that's what we're talking about.
But you know what? You may have noticed this too. And I got a call from Jimmy Fortune Friday before the meeting with Gaither, because Jimmy was sick and couldn't go to the meeting. So they came and told him, and I had talked to him the day before, and he said, and I said, hey, Jason Clark's trying to get a hold of you, and so we talked. Jason and I talked all that day before the plane, and so Jimmy called and said, "You need to hear this before you hear it somewhere else." And I was sitting in my living room, and there are no words, and all I could think was, all those people gathered in Seattle. How do you do what you do, and yet there's nobody better to be with at a time like that than people that are that compassionate.
Well, the most horrifying thing about it all is Autumn.
Right.
And poor Autumn lost her entire family.
Right.
I've never known anyone who lost their entire family in 1 second. Oh, but she is got a baby on the way.
And thank the Lord for that.
Thank the Lord for that. And she's got a good husband. And we are surrounding her the best that we can. As you know, you don't want to smother the poor girl.
Right.
But I've reached out and told her I'd love to have her go on the road with me when this new record comes out and sing some of these songs.
That's awesome.
I love
You know,
that,
and
Mark.
I can't build another group around her, but she can sing solo,
Yeah.
and they can fix the tracks. We can have
Yes.
video with
Do all the
them
video.
up on the screens.
And Mark is perfect.
Yes.
Because he has the relationship with Kelly and Jason and the girls. So
Yeah.
I love it.
So I don't know with it, but the Lord is still the Lord. You know, the preacher did say one good thing I really liked. He said, "A faith that can't be tested can't be trusted."
Right. Right.
And I thought that was good.
Yeah.
And we
I mean-
did see how strong Autumn was.
Oh
at the
my
funeral.
goodness!
When
Yes.
she came up
When
and
she-
sang with the Isaacs,
Yeah.
it was, I couldn't hardly breathe.
And
I'd never seen anything like
there
it.
was a couple of times, I don't know if you've seen the video, where she had the sweetest smile.
Yeah.
There was at the very beginning, and Sonia's arm was whacked, and it was absolutely perfect. You just felt, we were there, so you felt the Holy Spirit, and you just knew, you know what? I know for me, because this has all made me just.
I'm sorry. Look at me. You talk about not tapping the table.
But when at the end of that service, when they came in and led her out, I think Cindy looked at me and said, "And now it begins."
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. Her post
Oh, yeah.
was the normal. She had a beautiful
A new
sunrise, a new normal.
She said
And
the
what she
sun
wrote-
rises
Yeah.
this morning and a new
A
normal
new
begins
normal, yeah.
or something
And
like that.
it brought me a little bit of peace, the funeral did. Because I've had a hard time, I've had a hard time with this.
Yeah.
But watching her and watching the people, watching our artists surround her, and what Bill and Gloria said, it was absolutely, so God is good. And
The
he's
music was
faithful.
spectacular.
Yes, it was really good.
But the master of knowing what to do with the moments
Oh,
was
wow.
Bill Gaither.
Yes.
All the way.
Oh, absolutely.
And he kept, of course,
If he had been in total control, it
That's-
could have been even
I
better.
was trying to find a way to say that, but
Yeah.
yes.
But whenever he's not in total
Yes.
control, it's not what it could
There's
have.
people, and you know what? Something else interesting this week. I have never had so many people tell me they love me,
Oh yeah.
and there were
Oh.
texts from the platform the other day. Joseph Habedank, I love you,
Yeah.
and Cindy got one, and
At leaving the building the other night,
Yes.
the afternoon, hearing the people say, we were around these people all the time. I heard the same thing. People that you love, and they love you, but it was the hugs and the I love you, I love you, I love you. I heard it over and over, and I had countless texts.
Oh, me
as well.
too.
Yeah.
It just, I don't want to take it was like, we always want to keep taking this time to do
Right.
that. And that's, I mean,
Karen Peck texted.
oh, yeah,
Kevin Williams
yeah,
texted us, "Hey, I sure love you."
yeah.
And you know what? You always known that with that group,
Yeah,
and it is
yeah.
a tight community. But I think they needed to say it, and we needed to hear it.
Yeah. Because you don't know when will be the last time you'll get to say it or hear it. You know.
And was it somebody who spoke talked about how maybe it was Nathan's dad who said he didn't leave anything unsaid,
Yeah,
and I just thought,
Oh,
yes,
man. Oh, Nathan. Let's talk about Nathan Kissler a minute.
precious.
What a great guy.
he was a dear friend.
And he befriended my brother. I took my brother Mike on cruises and had him play guitar for me. And Nathan just took him under his wing. And Mike told me, he said, losing Nathan hurts me more than losing mom and dad.
Yeah.
And because, mom and dad, you expect that to happen. They get old. Mama had dementia. It was time. Daddy was 90. After 90, you're just getting greedy, And so Daddy made it to 90. And it's expected and it's sad, but it's the hope we have. We'll see him again. I just pretend Mama's on a road trip. Next time I see her, she'll be on a white horse, coming back.
Wow.
But this
It was not
stunned
the
me
process.
to the
Yeah.
core because they were in their prime.
Right.
so many things. I know this. I'll never get on another single engine plane. I'm just not.
It was a month ago this week, July 4th. We were in D.C. and Jimmy was singing at the Kennedy Center. Jimmy Fortune with Sandy Patty. It was a veterans thing, so I was going to play mandolin behind Jimmy, so I was up there for that. And so we're all out, his family and my family. We're going to Arlington because he and I have a song called "Meet Me at Arlington," and I had an idea we were going to film a little video there. And we're just, because it was all shut down, we just getting to the edge of Arlington, and Nathan texts and says, "So can I get you into the Bible Museum?" I said, "Jimmy?" And it was 100 degrees out, and we'd walk and said, "If we're going to go, we need to go now." So we all turned around, and Nathan had us passes to. I mean, he was that kind of guy.
Yeah.
He was a fan as well as a friend.
And a great singer.
Great singer.
Yes.
You should Google him if you
Yes.
if you're listening and never heard of Nathan Kistler, Kistler. He sings the Lord's Prayer.
In the Capitol, is it the
In the
Capitol?
Capitol.
And it's phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
It's absolutely. And what he loved Amber, and he was just he was just.
That was sweet hearing his
dad talk
dad
about
talk,
it,
yes.
how they met and everything.
Yes.
So,
And you know, you sit there, you watch that, and we didn't have any need to be there. We just needed to be there.
yeah.
And that those two can go together.
Yeah.
So you walk away and you go, okay, now we're trying to find our normal,
Yeah.
and you can't help but think. So for Dusty, he works for the record label. His new normal is going to take some big time adjusting. Your new normal is going to take some adjusting because of what you just said a minute ago. You were out there. You're with that family. You're thinking of forward with what you're going to do for her. My new normal is I just lost some friends.
Yeah. Which is all of them. They were friends to all of us. That's even in the business. I said they were more than just artists to me. They were friends for years.
Oh yeah.
Mark and Kelly and I mean, I knew that.
She was so much fun.
Oh,
what
she's
she
just
was.
the real deal.
And I'll miss that. But we believe what we're singing.
Yeah.
You
I
have to.
believe this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that the minute they touch the ground, they also touch streets of gold.
Yeah.
And I believe Norman Holland and
Her
Rex
daddy.
Nealon
Yeah.
and my mama
Yeah.
met him at the gate. I believe this stuff.
I believe it too. I believe it. I was trying to sort out my feeling about all this, and we talked about that, but I thought this is what we've all sung about.
Yeah.
It's what we've written about.
And we'll
It's what-
continue to
and we'll
sing about
continue to do that. But all of a sudden, when it's this reality is right there for you, it's
It
really-
hurts.
It hurts. But today, I woke up and I thought, you know what? We need to press on. We have a beautiful new record.
Yeah.
Finished.
Austin
done.
wants it released.
And Autumn wants
I mean,
it.
Au-
No, Autumn. One of the
Autumn.
most.
Hugh's daughter.
Everybody wants it released.
Autumn
which
is all
I
for
am
it.
thrilled about, and we're going to do that. And it was done way before any of this. So I always loved it. I want to say that because I don't want people to think we're capitalizing. This was. I mean, I love.
They were
the
so
text
excited
I
about
got
this.
the night before and that morning from
Yeah.
Kelly saying, "Oh, weren't these interviews so much fun this
Yes.
week?" And it's
So-
just, yeah.
Last night, it was probably 10 o'clock. We'd done a thing at church and we were going out. And I just sat down in the chair and I'm not a YouTube scroller,
Yeah.
but I just scrolled. I just typed in Rex Nealon singers.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see what videos popped up.
Mhm.
Some old things that I remembered, what I did not expect. I had no idea existed. It was probably back in the early 90s. You and I have talked about it. Kelly recorded a solo record on
Right.
Nans. And
She won a Dove Award, didn't she? For
it
her?
may have,
Yeah.
but it was like KTN or so. But she recorded one of the first things that Don Cook and I ever wrote, and it was a song called Quiet Answers. I had no idea there was a video.
Oh.
And I think she was already asleep. I was in the chair next to me, and I said, "Cindy,"
And
Yeah.
it was there.
and I wasn't ready for that,
No, I know.
but thankful for it.
Well, one thing that I thought about earlier this week too was because we work so closely with iTunes Spotify, Pandora, all the digital people. When I started seeing all this stuff come up, they were the Nans were the most downloaded and played artists of any genre last week.
Wow.
Really?
And so
On what, Pandora?
on iTunes and Apple.
Oh,
And you know what hit me? Think about the music, the impact, the people's lives that are touching, that is touching. And when you scrolled through this whole week, how many times did you see that Nealon's picture? Or Autumn yesterday.
Yeah.
Country Reels, a huge
9
million subscribers. Saw that. I don't know how many of those people
My
actually
brother
subscribe.
sent me a video, the one of them singing it. If we could see, if God pulled back the veil.
If God put,
Is that what it's called? Kenna
if
West.
if God pulled back
The veil.
pulled back the curtain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Powerful.
There's songs.
He said he can't quit listening to it.
Yeah, this is.
I gotta say this on kind of a funny note. We used to travel, with Spears. We worked a lot with Nealon's. I never remembered how much Rex sounded like Johnny Cash.
Oh, really?
I'll have to go back.
I never.
His
I never thought
solos,
about that either. Huh.
but it was that same kind of that low.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there last night thinking, I never remember that live, but boy. But I'm thankful. Part of that legacy, that Autumn will have, is how much of those kids' lives were captured on video.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah.
And God bless Bill.
They
Gaither.
grew up.
Yeah.
They grew up in front of all that.
And Mark, you kind of did that as well. You've kind of grown up in front of.
Oh, I've grown old.
I said you've grown up. You really haven't grown up.
I was already grown when I started this whole thing. And I was 30 when I joined the vocal band. I was 30 when I signed my Word solo deal.
And I was there and sold those records. I had hair. He had long dark hair.
Oh, yeah. And it was natural.
It was.
But you've always been, you've been aware of a great song. And you know what? If I remember, tell me if I remember this right. You were like 11 when you did Introducing Mark Lowry. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that a Benson record?
Yes, it was, yeah. That's, I was 11 years old. Well, when I was 9, my mother was trying to figure out how to do something with all this energy that I had. And I was singing church. I'd sing for the old people. I'd imitate Louis Armstrong, and I would wear a hat and cane. My mother had pictures of all that. Anyway, Mom saw this ad in the paper for roles for little boys to come to the Houston Music Theater and audition. So she said, we can sing, let's go try this. So we go down there and I audition and I start getting all these roles. But I couldn't dance. We weren't allowed to dance. We were Baptist. Right? And so, but they wanted, because I could sing and I was always on pitch for a kid, I guess. They would have me and I could act a little, I guess. So I did The Music Man with Hal March, who was a guy. I was at Little Winthrop. I did Annie Get Your Gun with Kay Starr. Do you remember that name?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, what a great singer she was. And I did Pinocchio. I was Pinocchio in Pinocchio.
I'm learning new.
And then I just got the part of Oliver when the theater went bankrupt. And the theater went bankrupt, I believe, because Mama prayed. Because Tommy Toon, who's also from Houston, told my mother, if you'll let me teach him to dance, I will take him to Broadway.
Oh my God.
And Mama didn't want me to go to Broadway. She wanted me not to be hyperactive. And so she started praying that the Lord would open up some gospel avenue. The theater goes bankrupt. Duke Westover in our church knew J.G. Whitfield, who owned the Quartet Convention, which was then called the International Song Festival. He said, I got a kid in my church who can sing. If I bring him to that, will you let him sing? And J.G. said yes.
He didn't say yes to many things.
And thinking probably that we wouldn't come.
Yeah.
So we did come. So I didn't learn about this later, but Duke, we arrived. We're in our little car. We're in the Memphis, Tennessee, where it was held at the time. And instead of doing Oliver, we're up here. And Duke and JG are talking across the parking lot, and I see them, and JG is explaining to Duke why I can't sing that night. And I walk up and stick out my hand and say, "Hi, Mr. Whitfield, I'm Mark Lowry. Thank you so much for letting me sing tonight." And I sang that night. So, and the next day, I signed the recording contract with the Benson Company for that album.
Now, if I remember right, was it fifth song, sixth song in, was the same title that is the new single for High Road, When I Lift Up My Head.
Oh, that's Dottie's, right? Dottie's song.
He
When
was,
I'm down,
he was a huge Rambo
when I'm
fan.
down and out.
But there were a couple of Dottie Rambo songs on there, right?
Probably, because I was
When I Lift Up My Head, is that was that good that you cut it at 11 years old, and it's the new single for High Road.
Is it real? It's a great
And
song.
it's doing great.
Well, it should. It's a
in the
Dottie
top
Rambo
10.
song.
Tell them, I love to hear how you met the Rambos when you saw them in concert. You talk about her hair.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had never been to a gospel concert, but we knew we were going to Nashville or Memphis to sing at this thing. So Mama wanted me to see one because I'd never seen one. Because they didn't have them, they didn't come to our church. The Imperials came to our church when I was 4, but no, they didn't have any gospel music.
Yeah.
My dad didn't like going to them because it made him nervous when people would clap on the music. He didn't like all that noise. So I'd never been to one. So I'm how old am I? I'm 11, and we go down to the Jones Hall in Houston, Texas, and Duke and Carlene Westover. The Duke was the guy that knew JG. They had front row seats, so they gave up one of their seats so I could sit on the front row. And the Happy Goodmans came out that night. Vestal had that, like 10 cow patties with a hairnet over it, piled high. You could house missionaries on furlough up in there. Big hair and a sequin dress. She looked like, she's an electrical storm. I just never seen so much electricity.
Wow.
I'd never seen anything like this. And then the Rambos came out, and it was Buck, Dottie, and Reba, of course, and Dottie had her hair up, and there were pearls going through them, and she had a long part going down this way because some said it should be up, some said it should be down, so she's covering her bases. And Buck had that Elvis lip, and I fell in love with Reba and the harmony.
Yeah, fantastic.
I didn't know what it was at the time, but the inversions,
Right.
and that they did, and they would pull together against the beat, and it was like riding a bronco, and I'd anyway, so that was it. And then when I got the recording contract, my dad bought me a bus. He bought the Inspirations bus for $10,000.
Oh, my.
Hired a backup group. Laddie Kane was in it. He was with the Oak Ridge Boys for a little bit, I think.
Right.
And then and it was Mark Lowry and the Impacts.
So let me ask you this. Do I remember right that
Did Bob McKenzie produce
Bob
it?
McKenzie produced it.
Is that what you're going to say?
probably Bob McConnell did?
Bob McConnell did the photo and did it in the Rambo's backyard because they knew I was a Rambo freak. Listen, the only reason I allowed them to take me out of school and put me on a bus and leave the world I had known, because I was pretty bossy, even at 11, is because I was going to get to sing with the singing Rambos most nights. Most nights. I would be on the stage with the singing Rambos. Our bus would follow theirs or these Battle of the Songs. And
did Elmo Mercer arrange that record?
Yes, he did.
Dave,
Yes.
look at you.
Elmo Mercer did, and he wrote one of the songs on it.
Okay.
Okay, wait.
All right, here's some more trivia for just to make sure I'm remembering this right. Do you remember who wrote the backliner notes on that record?
Lou Hildreth.
Lou Hildreth. And she didn't write just a paragraph. She
Oh,
wrote
no.
a backliner. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Lou Hildreth.
Now, what was your connection to Lou?
That she was my booking agency. We signed with her Skylight Talent Agency, and she was my booking agent.
I've heard some of this story before
here-
because the Rambos love.
Here's a
Mark.
photo you need.
Oh, my stars.
Unbelievable. I've heard some of these stories, but when you think about that, I mean, first of all, God ordained all that. And he was with the top recording company at 11 years old.
Yes.
He was traveling with the top group, one of the top groups,
Yeah.
probably the top 5 groups, the Rambos were in the top
But they'd
5.
book them, they'd book
Yeah.
me.
Lou Hildreth was one of the top booking
Yeah,
agents.
she was
and
a
has
powerhouse.
She was a powerhouse.
So when she writes a record called
Yeah.
Introducing Mark Lowry, she
Yeah.
writes a whole thing on the back of it.
Bob McKenzie producing it.
Did you write a song on there?
I hadn't written anything yet.
There was somebody
My mother.
Lowry wrote a
My
song
mother.
called Daddy Come Home, is that right?
Yes, it's about Vietnam War.
Dave.
Mama, wow, you did do your homework.
No, I didn't
really
understand it.
remember this?
This is why we started this
Wow.
podcast. We would go
How
and
did
sit
you
at a restaurant.
remember that?
In fact, the publishing on that, if I remember, I was a kid, but I look at copyrights, was Mount Perrin.
Oh, I have no idea.
And I was curious.
Who is Mount Perrin? Do you know?
I wondered
Mount
if it was
Perrin
something to do with the
Church of
church.
God?
Somebody must have made, Mama must have signed it to somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have
And
no idea.
your mom, you talked about big hair.
Yeah.
Now I may remember this way wrong.
And she's Baptist, but she liked big hair.
She liked big
But
hair.
she's from Texas. Texas and big hair go together. At least it did back in the.
Did I remember seeing a cover of her? They had stuff that it wasn't on their label, and it was like she was sitting at a piano or something. I can picture the cover.
I wish I could see that.
Oh.
I took a lot of those archives with me when they closed that.
Oh, you did?
They all had the sticker on, "Do not remove."
Yeah.
So if you ever come to my house, don't remove those.
Don't remove the sticker.
I had a bunch of those from my word days as well.
But your mom was also quite a writer, and she wrote with Marty Funderburk a lot.
Right. She loved to write. She wrote when I was 14. I did 2 albums with the Benson Company, and then I went back to school because my voice changed, and that whole career was over immediately, which is great. I didn't care. I got to go back to school, and I hadn't been in school since I was 11 because I was on the American Correspondence course, and that's not school. So anyway, when I went back to school, I started making good grades because I was so thrilled to be back. I actually applied myself, and then I made an album when I was 14, a custom record, and Mama wrote a couple of songs on there. And then I didn't do any more until I got to college. And when I was in college, I was studying to be I was going to get a business degree.
That's scary.
So, but the Lord called me. I mean, I'm a Baptist, and I know He spoke to me. And
Wow.
He doesn't, He doesn't do this often.
No.
Not to me. And He always talks in Texan too, so I can understand Him real well. And it was a Sunday afternoon. I was 19. I was lying in my bed in my dormitory, which was the old hotel downtown that Jerry Falwell had bought. They had no air conditioning. And I had a window fan in the window, trying to get cool and trying to go to sleep. And I'm too awake to go to sleep. Sunday afternoon is for naps.
Right.
Yes.
So I always pray when I'm like that because that puts me to sleep right away. And I don't think the Lord minds. I mean, what healthy father wouldn't love their child falling asleep while talking to them? I mean, good night. So I always pray. Next thing I know, I'm gone. But I was praying, and I heard in my spirit. It was much louder than audible.
Right.
Why won't you do what I want you to do?
Wow.
And I said, I'll do whatever you want. I started talking to Him like this was normal. Like we'd done this many times before. It was so odd. Even if it means going into music. Well, you've never called me. Well, I'm calling. Well, you'll have to get the word out because this is your idea. And within a week, I was booked up to the end of the year and have not been unbooked to this day. Because a preacher boy came up to me, Charles Hughes was his name, and he asked me, he said, would you like to travel with me? And I put out a fleece. I forgot to tell you about that because I didn't think it was the Lord. You know, when I'm praying and talking to Him, I said, okay, but to make sure, this is a big commitment, So I put out a fleece because I heard that was a good thing to do. So I said, okay, then they have to ask me to sing in church tonight. And I knew, first of all, it had never happened. I was a freshman. It had never happened. I'd never been asked to sing in chapel. I never told anybody I could sing. My past was my past. Now, Falwell knew because I'd sung in his church when I was 12.
Right.
But I didn't audition for any of the groups, didn't want to be in any of the groups. I was there to try to get a business degree and support missions. That was my goal. So, the guy who wrote, "For God so loved the world, He gave His only Son." You know who wrote that? What's his name?
No.
To die on Calvary's tree, from sin to sin.
I remember the song, but who wrote it?
Someday He's coming back. What glory that will be. Wonderful. It's a great melody.
Yes.
His love. His name was, I don't know. Look it up. Google it.
I will.
Anyway, and he was old and he'd written that song. He was doing a concert that night. So I go through that whole service. Nobody even knew I was in it. And I'm going out that side door at the Thomas Road Baptist Church, almost to the door, when Dave Randlett, who was the minister of music at the church and of the chapel and everything, stopped me and said, "Will you sing in chapel in the morning?"
Good night.
And the Lord once again said, "Where are you?" "I'm in church." "What just happened?" "You were asked to sing." It was tricky. But I said, "Okay, I'll do it."
Goodness sakes.
And that's when Charles Hughes walked up and said, "Will you be my singer?" Falwell passed me in the hall, said, "Will you sing on TV next Sunday?"
Gosh.
Because he'd seen me on a TV show down in Texas and it made him think of, and all these circumstances.
Yeah, it just happened.
But
to happen.
looking back,
Yeah.
I think it might have been God.
Yeah, you think so?
Uh,
So we went to hear you the other night for the first time. I've known you a lot of years. In fact, there's a funny story.
The reason I'm crying is because I've lost my testosterone.
Well,
Ever since I lost my testosterone, I cry so easy.
you know, at your age, you ought to be thankful
I know.
you do.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful. I like it.
So years ago, Mark wouldn't remember this, but Don and I had offices downtown on Broadway, and it was John Barker had an office in there, so we had a lot of people that came in and out. Mark walks past my desk and sees a lyric I was working on, and back then everything I would type, I did it in all capital letters. And Mark walks by and he goes, "Why are you yelling at me?" And I had never thought about all caps in a lyric made it look like I was yelling. And that changed me that day. I never did it again.
Really?
Do you have any recollection of saying that?
I can imagine me saying that.
You did.
Because when I see all caps, I immediately think you're yelling at me.
And I had never, but then once you hear that, you can't unhear it. You can't
Right.
see it. So, yeah, okay.
Okay, that's funny. I didn't know.
So when I'm listening to the story, I'm thinking, and Dusty, y'all go further back. You know most of these pieces, the questions I'm asking. So interrupt
No, I
whenever.
love this. I love hearing some of this.
But so we talked about you start this thing at 11, and then you didn't sign or do the Gaither thing, and there were Gaither songs on that.
Oh, I
First
think
record.
he touched me. The first
I
album,
bet-
I didn't take. The first album, I was 9. Because my mom and dad thought when my voice changed, I wouldn't be able to sing anymore. So they took me down to a little studio in Houston, paid $500 for that album, and we called it "He Touched Me." That was the name of that album.
Did you cut I've Been to Calvary?
Oh yes, but that
On
was
that
on
first
the 11-year
Right.
record. Love that song.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Bill won't record it anymore because Spear owns the copyright. He won't admit to it, but I swear that's the reason.
Well, he did own the copyright.
Who owns it now?
Bill.
Oh, Bill got it back, or whoever owns Bill's
It's probably
stuff.
going to be.
Bill sold all his to that YouTube people.
Yes.
And what a brilliant thing he did. You know, Bill Gaither has made the right decisions the entire trip.
Yeah.
He has made brilliant decisions.
So when I was a young writer, I wanted to know. I have a picture of Ben Spear took a picture of when I first met Bill Gaither. It's a funny picture because we both look pretty young.
Yeah.
but I had written a song called "I've Been There" that Jake Hess ended up doing, and Ben Spear did it. And so Ben made the connection, and I couldn't hardly talk out loud around Bill. I was so intimidated. In fact, Bill tells the story. He told it at the Enlighten launch thing. He told it to Jason Clark.
Okay.
He said, yeah. He said, when Ben introduced me to Bill, according to Ben, Bill said, "Where are you from?" And according to Ben, I said, "Jackson, Michigan." So Ben later, and Bill tells this story all these years later, but Ben said, "Dave, you met the President of the United States. You played for President Carter and you weren't nervous." He said, "Why were you?" And I said, "Well, if President Carter had written He Touched Me, I would." So Bill tells that story.
That's a good story.
So anyway, I go up and I'm nervous. And I'm going to spend some time. And my point was I was going to ask him, if you think I've got anything here, I'll keep pursuing this, but I'm still young enough to go get an education.
Right.
If not.
Yeah.
And Bill listened to a bunch of songs and sat in his living room. And I was nervous. And he said, you know what? You're sniffing around all the right places. And that was the perfect advice, because the stuff wasn't all that good. But I was sniffing around the right places, and I'm still trying to find it.
Yeah.
But so all that to say, we're walking through. You said he's made all the right choices. We're walking through. He wanted to show me his new warehouse, Alex's house.
Right.
So here's the kid and his hero walking through, and I said, "Does it ever surprise you how fast it happened?" And his answer was, "It didn't just happen. We had a plan, and we stuck to it." And what we stopped walking right at that question, and he leaned over and picked up sheet music till He Touched Me.
Oh, did he?
Well, didn't that work out nice for you?
Yeah.
But yes, but it's never been so much about his talent as to me. It's been about his awareness.
Yeah.
Of the
And he
moment.
married the right person.
Yes.
If
he's-
anybody married the right person, he
And I
married.
think he said that day, there are not many geniuses in Christian music, but I'm married to one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sure
I've heard him
did.
say that. Yeah.
He sure did.
So my question in hearing you tell the story, and Dusty, I'm talking too much. I'm
I
sorry.
know. I love this.
All this happened at 11, and then all of a sudden you were 30,
Okay.
and I know Jesus had his silent years. Is that
Well,
where
no,
we're heading
no,
with
no,
this?
no, listen. So I start traveling with the evangelist,
Yep.
Charles Hughes. We have a van wreck. I break 11 bones. He's in a coma for 2.5 months. It's a big deal. In fact, if you want to know what happened, you could probably Google Mark Lowry "Pivot on Your Good Foot" and hear it. It turned into a 20-minute story, because all the bad days in my life usually end up in a story. Because that's where the good material is. I mean, who remembers your good days? I don't. But, so we're in this wreck, and I thought we were going to be the next Billy Graham team. I mean, he was a great preacher. I sang and led singing, and Dave Musselman played the piano, and Dick Bernier drove our van that had been given to us. So we were a team out of college, but Charles would take a world map and a yardstick, and if it reached, he thought we could drive it in a weekend, So we were headed to Tioga Center, New York one weekend. About midnight, we hit some ice. The van starts sliding, the 18-wheeler tops the hill. Next thing, we're all in the hospital. So this team is broken up. Charles got better, but we never got back together. And I started singing on my own. Well, I was doing a radio show for the LBC campus with one of my professors. And it was just a fun show, but we had to quit doing commercials with car wrecks in them. You know how you have the sound effect? Well, when you're driving a car and you hear a car wreck, that's not good. So we were having a lot of fun. Well, Roy Morgan, have you ever heard that name?
Yeah.
Roy Morgan was also a student at Liberty. He was mopping the floor in his dorm. That was his job. And he was listening to our radio program. He called me and said, "I'd like to book you." I said, "Great, I don't got no bookings." And come to find out, he could book a pork chop into a synagogue. He took the Baptist Bible Fellowship Directory. The Baptist Bible Fellowship Directory started calling churches, booked me in 43 concerts in 41 days, right out of graduation.
Unbelievable.
I was immediately on the road, setting up my Bose PA system, running my 8-track, selling my 8-tracks and cassettes and albums, and the offering would be $100, but I'd do 1,000 on the product table.
Yeah.
So I immediately switched to a for-profit corporation. I was a 501c3, but early on, I said, that's not right. Mother Teresa's nonprofit, this is a cash cow. And I switched to being a for-profit corporation and started paying my taxes like everybody should. And the Lord blessed me even more.
Wow.
It's like more money started. Of course, it's just me, wasn't much overhead. Give me in a microphone, I can do an hour. It's not hard. But also, I had no brochure, but these preachers would talk. And one would tell their buddy, you got to have this kid. And really, you this. And I stayed booked.
But it was under the radar.
Oh, yeah. For 8 years. All independent Baptist churches, nothing else. I lived to break into the Southern Baptist market.
Wow.
Market, isn't that funny to call it a market? But that's what, man, if you could get into the big Southern Baptist church. But then Roy Morgan, 8 years we've done this, 200 concerts a year. George Yonts, Kirk Talley told me this, George Yonts, because Roy would send my itinerary into the Singing News and they would print it. And it'd be a page and a half, And George Yonts said, I don't know who this Mark Lowry is, but he's going to be rich. And so, what? Okay, wait, I was going somewhere with all that.
I bet you were going to lead into how Roy got you.
Oh, yeah, Roy. Oh, yeah, Roy was also starting to promote concerts, which, he became the Roy Morgan of Super Wow, whatever these big contemporary Christian and country things. He's gone on to be huge. And I have never known a greater man. I have never known a better man.
Wow.
I've never known a more frugal man. Yeah. I'm telling you, he's got the first penny. If he swallowed a piece of coal when he pooped, it'd be a diamond. And he is giving.
I'm trying to be a serious.
He's giving millions away.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just, and he's always, his crown's gonna be so big, he's gonna need.
Did Roy take
He's gonna
you
need
to
a neck
word?
brace.
Did Roy take you to word? Okay.
No. So what happened is, so Roy hands Bill Gaither a video of me. I'd just done a solo video in a church in Alabama. And he gives that to Bill. Well, Gary McSpadden was leaving at that time. And Bill saw it and he thought, well, he sings okay. And he's in the baritone range. And this is different, the comedy. He thought it was kind of hokey, but it could work. And because he always thought our comedy together was much better than my solo comedy. He loves to say that. But, so anyway, so I went, but at the same time, I'm going to Estes Park.
Yes.
Right?
Okay,
as a solo artist. Yeah. And that's a whole nother story, too, that I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, because I guess you got the...
We're good, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was doing 200 churches a year, and I couldn't get a record company to look at me, and I wanted to be on Word Records. That was the big deal to me, because they had Sandy Patty, Lorna O'Hara, Steve Green. I know not Steve Green, but Word was the one in my eyes for some reason.
Amy Grant.
Yeah, and so I was sitting with my friend Lynn Barrington at the Moustache Cafe in L.A. We had become friends through my other friend Lynn Kiesecker, who had written a song with me that Kathy Sullivan recorded. She was the first person to ever record a song I wrote. And she was on the Lawrence Welk show, Kathy Sullivan.
Good night.
And the song was What a Savior He Is, which is on my new record.
Which is a great song.
Well, Lynn Kiesecker wrote Yes, Lord, Yes?
Yes, he sure did. And so anyway, I'm sitting there with Lynn. We'd become friends. She'd become a mentor. She'd taken me out of my polyester suits and into more funky, stupid look, I must say, looking back on it. I mean, I don't know why I let her take me that far, but I did, because I didn't know any better. I just, yeah, I'll wear that. I don't care. So, she said, you know what your problem is? Because I was complaining. She said, you've got wannabe tattooed on your forehead and they can smell you coming. She said, you've got 200 concerts booked this year.
Wow.
Are you grateful for those concerts? She said, most of the people on the stage that you envy to be on would kill for 200 concerts a year. When are you going to be grateful for what God's given you? And she held a mirror up to me. She said she's never seen anybody repent so fast. I mean, I turned on a dime. I started thanking God. I mean, it's like
we also had a lot to repent for.
Oh, I didn't care. I didn't care if I was ever on that stage once I got there.
Wow.
It was like, oh God, I am so sorry.
But there's a lot of wisdom in what she said.
Oh my gosh, yes, it changed my life.
Yeah.
Because 6 months later, I was on that stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Through a set of circumstances that I could go into was Spencer, Judy Spencer and her husband talked to Cam Floria, because I'd been to their church, and she talked him into having me. And she said to him, and I didn't know this till later, I guarantee you he'll get a standing ovation. Well, if she had told me that, I would never have gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
That pressure. But my whole thing, it was so cool, because I had just enough time to go do it on a Monday morning. I had to come off the stage, get in a car and drive to Denver, get in a plane, go back to a camp I was doing in Georgia. They'd let me off on that Monday. And so as a Monday morning, I'd met Sandy Patty for the first time the night before. And Amy Grant, who was supposed to, Dallas Home was supposed to introduce me. And I asked her if she'd do it. I said, because I've got an idea. And so she did. And she introduced me. I said, thank you, Amy, for that wonderful introduction. I said, are y'all ready to rock and roll? No, I said, thank you, Amy, for that wonderful introduction. That album, My Father's Eyes, is still my favorite. Are y'all ready to rock and roll? They went, yeah. I said, tough, I don't do that. And I sang a song, told a story about going to Pittsburgh and not getting paid. And I knew two things about that audience. See, the key to this is knowing who's in the audience.
Absolutely it is.
I knew everybody out here and out in this part of the auditorium were registrants.
Yes.
Me, for the past 8 years.
Right.
Wishing I was in that center section.
Yeah.
They're all out here, right? They're the wannabes. And all these people are the former wannabes.
Yes.
But they're all the same.
Yeah.
And I knew all of them had been to some church at some point who just gave them a handshake and a smile.
Yes.
So I told this story about going to Pittsburgh, not getting paid, and how I was out of money, almost out of gas, and I was driving down the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I told the Lord, your employee didn't get paid tonight. This car likes gas. My stomach likes food. I said, Michael Jackson doesn't even sing for you, and he's got almost as much money as you do. And the Lord spoke to me again and said, Mark, whatever they paid you, it's more than you deserve.
Wow.
And anything above burning in hell is a privilege.
Wow.
Gosh.
And I said, Lord, your employee didn't get paid tonight, but it sure beats hell.
You know what, Estes Park was a pivotal place for 20 years.
For many people.
For a lot of people.
Including me.
But
from that, the sound man at that Monday morning was also Bill Gaither's sound man. So Bill says, did you hear anything interesting at Estes Park?
Of course he did.
And the sound man told him about me, and he just had my video given to him by Roy Morgan. And you know how...
Yes.
And then I didn't know, can you do the vocal band and be a solo artist? I never dreamed you could do... First of all, it was never my dream to be in the vocal band. That came totally blindsided. I'd never sung in a group, never wanted to sing in a group. Didn't even care really about singing. I love to talk, but singing is work. And especially in a group where you got to learn parts and all.
Right.
But I knew it was a big deal. And so I would go out and then I'd say, no, I don't want to. And then I'd change my mind. And I'd say, because Bill was taking me out on the road to see it. And it was fun.
Yeah.
But fine. And Michael English did not want me in the group because I'd never been in a group. And he wanted a real baritone. And so, but at Praise Gathering that year, 88, Bill turned me loose on that stage. I had never been in front of 11,000 people in my life. And it was in the round. And they were all laughing in my direction.
Yeah.
I have never experienced that before.
Wow.
It was like, man, it was like playing tennis with 11,000 people. You say it and they laugh and you get this rhythm going. And Michael English that night said, okay, you want to be in the group? He finally realized I was bringing more than not, you know.
And you were bringing a change in the tempo too. You got them there by a different way.
Yeah.
And so all this, a couple weeks ago, Sandy Patty did her big thing at the Kennedy Center, and Jimmy walks out with a guitar and does more than just Name on a Wall. Well, if he had tried to be Sandy,
yeah, right,
but the pace was perfect.
yeah,
It let both of them get the crowd by a different way.
right. Well, that's how that happened. Yeah,
Where did word come in?
right at about the same
About
time.
the same time. Was anybody
Because
there?
because when I left on Monday, all the record companies were hitting up Roy Morgan. He was there, right?
Was John Mays there? Who signed your link?
Lynn Keysucker, but what was the blonde-headed fella?
Dan Postema?
No,
Roland Lundy?
no, not Roland. I remember Roland.
But Don Cason was.
No, but he was involved a lot.
They,
I tried to quit Word because I wasn't doing any good and I didn't want to mess. I said I was doing better when I was selling solo off my product table. Yeah, and Don wouldn't let me out. And it did get better.
Yes.
You know, it got better. But I always thought I don't want to hold y'all back. I mean, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't let me out. He says like a marriage. You know, you go through humps and bumps.
When sometimes you're the guy that signed the contract, you're looking at a different measuring stick than they are from the corporate side too. They're making a dime that you don't know about. So it's a win even when you.
Yeah.
You talked about Fall Wild. One of the stories I was thinking about when you were telling that. We talk a lot about Jimmy Fortune just because he's one of my favorite people on the planet.
Me too.
Jimmy had a father who was an alcoholic, and the story is pretty phenomenal about how his dad, it came to a point when it was like, okay, he told his mom, I've tried everything else, I'm going to try church. And they were having a little revival at their little church in Virginia that week, and his dad went to the altar that night. It made a eternal decision that changed forever. The evangelist was a young preacher named Jerry Falwell.
Really?
That led Jimmy's
Isn't
dad.
that something?
And I love those stories of, one of my favorite stories that this involved you, and I don't know if it's true or not, but this time we're going to ask, and maybe lie to me if it's not. So I produced, you talked about Norman Howell. Norman hired me to produce 2 records for J.D. Sumner and the Stamps at Riversong. And the first one was pretty rough. It was, I was a fan and I saw things I didn't want to see.
Oh.
And I didn't, but it got nominated for a Grammy. So they wanted me to do the second one. And I said, no, I want to be a writer anyway. It wasn't worth what I went through.
Oh.
So we sat and had a great JD, and I told him, he said, I want you to do it, blah, blah, blah. So he came into the studio on the second record, and there are a lot of backstories to that, but he was a changed man. And all I could think sitting in that control room down at Quad was, thank you, Lord, for letting me come back and do something I didn't want to do. Because I saw a different side of, and so I was telling Gaither about this, and I said, something happened between those 2 records. And I know Mary died during that time. And Bill said, I said, I don't know what the story was. I just know something. Bill said, "What year was it?" I told him. He said, "Here's the story." He said, "It was a conversation with Mark Lowry." And he said that according to Bill, you said, "JD, are you going to heaven?" And
he said, no, actually, he brought it up. We were in the car, and for some reason, he said, if I get to heaven, it'll be by the skin of my teeth. And I said, JD, ain't none of us getting in by the skin of our teeth. I said, it's all about grace. And we'd had so many discussions about the Church of God that he was raised in. It was really, that particular church evidently was really strict. And if your hair touches your ears, you're going to hell. And so he, you know, his life was, okay, I'm going to hell anyway. If I'm going to get any heaven, it's going to be here. So he did live a wild and crazy life, and maybe that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I was reading a book called The Grace Awakening by Chuck Swindoll at that time. And I was learning so much about how crazy God is about me. You know, it was blowing my mind. And that he liked me. And that he'd rather die than live without me, all kind, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'd read, and then I'd go over at night and sit with JD, and we'd discuss it, you know, in our conversations, you know, because I was with him almost. He was alone, I was alone, you know, we hung out. He was great. And he was funny. And he's an old guy that it was a good hang, you know.
Yeah, yes.
And he had good Elvis stories, you know.
Yeah.
Some of you could tell.
Yeah, right. But anybody who's got a good story, I love being around them. And so I saw grace dawn on him.
That's what Gaither told me.
When he realized the length of his hair and that God's, and I can't even begin to tell you what all we discussed, but I was learning it too. I knew the Lord, and I know JD knew the Lord.
Yeah.
But he didn't know how crazy the Lord was about JD. And I didn't know how crazy.
Wow.
But what parent, look, if you would just look at God like a healthy parent.
Wow.
You know, think of the healthiest father you know. Mine wasn't bad. My brother's a great father. Benji Gaither is one of the greatest fathers I've ever witnessed.
Wow.
Multiply that by infinity. And you got our Father in heaven.
That's the version I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Dusty, I've been doing all the talking.
Yeah.
What did you always wanted to ask Mark? Y'all are old friends. What did you
Here's
want to
what
ask
I want to say before we get off this
right.
subject. If you were walking down the hallway of your home and you overheard how many children do you have?
3.
3, that's a great number. You overheard your 3 children arguing, maybe they're 9, 10, and 12, let's just pretend. Arguing in their room, going at it, screaming, hollering, fighting, not physically, but arguing. And you put your ear to the door, what are they arguing about? And you hear them arguing about how they can be more like you. You know. Which one would you kick out? The one that got it wrong the most?
Wow.
And you being evil know how to give good gifts. Jesus tried to tell us. How much more? No. You would be, first of all, if you pick yourself up off the floor, that they would even want to be like you. But that's all we're doing when we're discussing our theologies. Most of the people I know that disagree with me on theology want to know.
Yeah.
They're not disagreeing to be mean. They're disagreeing because they're ignorant.
So true. So true.
I'm kidding. I could be the ignorant one, you know. Who knows?
I've known Mark nearly 40 years, and he's the king of comedy. But he's not. I love it. He always used to say he's a storyteller. We used to call him a comedian at word, and that's not what Mark is.
Yeah.
That's part of it. He's a humorist, but he's a storyteller. But I've always loved.
That's how I knew the Baptists were listening.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't shout, that's Pentecostal.
Yeah.
They wouldn't clap, that's giving glory to men. The independent Baptists back in my day. But they would laugh.
Yeah.
And I knew they were listening. All I cared about is, are you listening?
Yeah. And he's always been like this. I remember in the house in Dottie's and Buck's house when you would come over in Atlanta when I first met you nearly 40 years ago.
Wow.
You lived in Ackworth, I think.
Yes.
That's where we first
Yes.
met at a restaurant with Dottie.
Yeah.
Dottie wanted me to meet Mark Lowry because
Yeah.
they loved him. But when she got really bad in pain, Mark would come over to the house here in Nashville when we all moved here.
Wow.
He'd sit there, and he would get in that depth that he does. But he'd also stir it right around where he'd make her laugh, and that's what I've always known about him. You've always made us laugh, but I'll walk away from here thinking about what he just said about the 3 kids. I'd not heard him say that before.
Wow.
I
And
mean,
you start thinking about
he's
stuff.
a
like that.
father.
Yes.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
He's a good father.
So, speaking as a father, I have a daughter that is a huge Mark Lowry fan.
Oh,
and
really?
about 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
you were out at Lebanon,
Hillsborough.
Yes.
and
Hillsborough.
my daughter got to meet you, and I won Daddy of the Year for that.
Are you kidding?
Because Allison it was an intermission, and Q came and said, "All right, come on back," and I got to go and let my daughter hang out
I love that.
with Mark
I didn't
Lowry.
know that.
and that was a pretty cool thing. That night, we're about out of time. I
can
can't
go on
thank
and
you
on.
enough
Yeah.
for coming and spending today with us. And
Well, I needed it too.
well, there's some healing in the,
And it's
just
good
being
to
able
talk
to
about the
it. Yeah.
goodness of God, you
Yeah.
know? And it's good to have a friend that you can talk about it with. Because if I don't talk about him, I forget him.
Right.
I am a talk thinker. I don't know what I'm thinking till I hear myself say it.
Yeah.
And to be able to rehearse or not rehearse, but relive the stories of the
You do
goodness
rehearse
of God.
the stories. It's
Yeah.
what the Jewish people did, still do. Every year they rehearse
I love
by
that.
telling it
That
again.
is a good word then for it.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of how God really has been there the entire time.
Yeah.
So that night at that concert, I'd never heard you just do what you do. You know, you see the video clips, but that night you came out. It was the benefit for the veranda,
Right.
and you walked out, and they were already laughing by the time you walked out, which enabled you to take them wherever you wanted to.
Right.
And the video clip of your mom,
Oh yeah.
where you asked her if she remembered who wrote the song, and
Right.
she didn't, but she wrote it.
Yeah.
And we just lost my mother-in-law to Alzheimer's, a pastor's wife, and so we were there with you before that story, but really leaning in at that point. But you said something that night that wrecked me.
Oh.
I'm a writer. I've gotten to do my whole life all I've ever felt like I was called to do. That night you talked about praying that God would give you something that would last beyond you. I'm not a singer. I'm not the guy on stage. I always just wanted to write my songs and God's let me do it.
Yeah.
But that night I went home and I thought, have I done something that would live beyond me?
Oh yes, you have. Yes, I'd say so.
And I felt like that. I thought about that line this week at the funeral. That none of us were planning on being at. And I thought, Lord, why let me do something? Because we don't know when our beyond is coming. I want to say I love you to all the people that need to hear it. But I want to hear it too. I'm not going to have a legacy of videos that I leave behind. But part of why we do this podcast is I want my kids to know the stories.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And you know, I try to tell the
you
people.
thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for all you've done for the kingdom too. I guarantee you that many of your songs are going to be here long. If you go soon, they're going to be. Now, if you take your time. No, I'm kidding. I forgot what I was going to say something brilliant and it just left me. Don't turn 66, y'all.
We're all the same
all
age.
Are you 66?
Well,
Close.
you'll get there about 3 months before me, and Dusty gets there 2 weeks before me. So
Oh, okay.
we're all pretty close.
Yeah, I already hit it. June 24th. Mine's 66. This has been good.
This has been right.
Yeah.
What's the this may be way out of line to ask, but you're as good as Gaither is with the moment. I've watched you enough to know that there were things at that service the other day that I kept thinking, boy, they're sitting in front of the best communicators in the world. Is there a song that you were sitting there thinking, if
You know, I really wasn't. I don't sit there and think those things.
Yeah.
I don't. I just know Bill's in charge and it's gonna be all right. But no, I thought it was great. I would like to have heard 2 or 3 more songs.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a little less talking.
I texted Brian Spear. I don't know. Do you know Brian very well?
Oh yeah.
He was the
Love
best
him.
man at our wedding.
Oh, was he? He's a
Really?
good man.
I texted him. I said, "Are you watching?" He said that the signal just went down. I said, "They're doing your granddad's song. I'm his and he is mine."
Oh, I know. But now they've got it up. If you go
Yes,
to my
yeah.
Facebook page,
Yeah.
I've got a link to it where they've got the entire 3 hours.
But I thought, here's Brian,
Yeah.
his granddad's song, and I'm looking around at that platform. I'm seeing the tallies and all these generations, and I go to
Singing.
walk out, and I run into Clark Beasley and his dad, all that second generation, and now the third generation, and I just thought, if everybody's grieving over this story, but I don't think the outsiders have an inkling how tight this community is.
It really is. It's a family. And I met some in our family for the first time. You know, there's some groups, my path never crosses them, but they were there.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed getting to meet them and see old friends. And that's what funerals are.
Yeah.
They're more for the living.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because all 4 of them, all 7 of them are kicking up gold dust. You know, I've said this about my mom. I don't really grieve much. Now, I've grieved pretty hard on this one. I didn't know I could grieve this hard because they were too young, right? And it's too many of them all at once.
Yeah.
But they're kicking up gold dust.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
Let them grieve.
Yeah. So good.
Wow.
They should be grieving
This
for
is
us.
good.
Thank you so much for coming today. And Dusty,
Listen, I love listening, and
it's
that's
right.
why we do what we do. We love
We
to
love
tell
to
the
tell the
story.
story.
Started in a restaurant.
I enjoyed it. I know. I'm just like you. That's why I did dinner conversations.
I know.
'Cause I love food and talking.
We
Well,
love you,
thank you.
Mark. Thank you so
Love
much.
y'all too, and thank God for both of you, what you've done for our industry, and my goodness, the songs.